Alright, welcome back, Codex. Today we're talking about PS02, which is our second Photoshop assignment. We're going to be using our letter template to create some layers and to learn how to use masks. The first thing you should do is you should have Photoshop open. I opened up Photoshop, and now I have my default screen here open. If your screen looks any different than it does from mine right here, you can go up to Window and Workspace and Reset Essentials, and that will reset your layout of your Photoshop to look pretty much the same as we have here. So there we go. I have my default layout. I'm going to go up to File and Open Recent, and you should see the template that you created before with PS02. It should be on this list somewhere. So if you click on that, it will open up the template that we used in the past, which looks like this. A blank white piece of paper with our rulers already drawn out there for us. What we're going to do today is we're going to learn about the marquee tool, which is right up here in the top right of our screen. You see what looks like a rectangle, and it's kind of a cutout rectangle. It's got some kind of cutout lines. If you click on this and you hold down the mouse button, you'll see there's another option. You can make circles or squares using this method. You can also choose a single row of pixels if you want to do that as well. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to pick the square or the rectangle marquee, and I'm going to click up at the very top left hand corner and drag down, and you're going to see this marching ants. They call this marching ants. Basically, this tells Photoshop that you have this area selected right now. If I'm done with working on the selection and I want to change it, or if I want to stop using this selection, I can right-click, and you can use deselect to deselect that area. There we go. My marching ants are gone. If I wanted to choose an area besides this spot, like I wanted to choose all the other squares over here, I can right-click and go to Select Inverse, and it will choose all of the other areas of that mat or of that canvas. So I'm going to right click and go back to Select Inverse. There we go. The first thing that I want to do is I want to create an adjustment layer for a color. To do that, all of our adjustment layers are down here on the very bottom right. You're going to see what looks like a little circle that is half black and half white. This is how you create adjustment layers. So I'm going to click on that adjustment layer, and you're going to see all these various layers that you can create. Now if you recall, layers are basically just pieces of paper or cells that are stacked on top of each other. So when I click on solid color here, you can see that a new layer is created down here in my layers menu. And what pops up is a color picker, so I can choose whatever color I want to use. I'm going to choose a nice red color here. You start by picking which color out of the rainbow you want to use, and then you choose what shade of that color you would like to use. And depending on your own personal taste, you can choose whatever color you want for this assignment. I'm going to choose a dark green. That's pretty cool. Okay. I've made my color layer, and down here on the bottom you can see that layer. And not only do you see the layer, but you see this little rectangle with a white and black area right here. This is a layer mask. And the way to think about a layer mask is that it hides everything on your layer that is in the black area, and it will only show the things that are in the white area here. So right now, I'm showing just this area of my mask. If I wanted to take the mask out but leave the layer, I could click on this mask right here. You can see that it selects it. I can click and drag that into the trash, and now the mask will be deleted. And you can see that this color fill actually takes up the entire screen. For those of you who are doing the extra credit portion of this, you can create a layer mask out of a custom shape by going down here to your custom shapes. When you have it by default, it's going to be a rectangle tool in between the black arrow and the hand here. But if you hold down the mouse button, you can choose the custom shape tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to make it a path. Up here before we made shapes that we could use that fill in certain colors. But for today's project, I'm going to go and change this to path like this. Now I can choose which shape I want to use, like I'm going to use this paw print here. If I click and drag that area right here, you can see that I made a little path, but it didn't really do anything yet. What I need to do is make this into a mask. So if I click on this area up here where it says make, I can make it a mask. And if I do that, now it's going to hide everything in the area behind it, and now we are stuck with just this one section right here, which looks like that. Now I have a specific shape. I can do this with any kind of layer. So let's see how else, or what else I can make to do this. I'm going to use the marquee tool one more time to select an area, like over here. And I'm going to go back into my adjustment layers and pick gradient. A gradient basically goes, oh, let me select that area. Apparently I didn't select it. I need to select the area first, and then I click on the little circle on the bottom right, and I go to gradient. And now it's just going to fill this area with the gradient. With the gradient, there's a whole bunch of different choices of types of gradients you can use. If you don't like any of the gradient choices that you have, you can click on this little gear to the right of it, and you're going to see a whole bunch of different options of things you could choose. Like, I wonder what metals look like. I'm going to pick metals and press OK. And now I have these different metallic looking gradients. I can go back into that gear and choose something else like color harmonies. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, I got a rainbow gradient. I got a whole bunch of different kinds of gradients. I'm going to pick this one right here. In the gradients section, you'll see that you can also choose not just linear style gradients that go from one color to another, but you can make it radial, which is like a circle gradient. You can make it an angle, which starts at one color and then wraps around to the other side. You can use reflected, which makes it look like it's on a horizon. Or diamond, which is like the radial except in a square form. Lastly, you can choose the angle right here, or not lastly, second to last, there's an angle, so I can alter which direction my radiant appears to fade from. I can make it fade from the side or diagonally or straight up and down. I can move my gradient around. Lastly is the scale here. I can make my gradient occur in less time, like that, or I can make it take a longer time for it to fade from one color to the other. Now, just like before, with the extra credit version of this assignment, I'm going to click on my custom shape tool down here. I'm going to choose a shape that I want to use for this particular layer. Let me see here. I'll pick this hand. I like that one. I'm going to drag out that hand onto that area, and then I'm going to click on mask up here. And when I do that, the area that's behind is still there, but now I have it masked to where I have a special shape that I can put as an encapsulation of that layer. You'll notice that if you use the move tool like I have up here and I have the show transform controls selected, I can now move this around. I can make it smaller or bigger. But it's just a mask. You'll notice that the layer is still back behind it, and it doesn't move around when I move the mask. Just something to keep in mind when you're working with this, that when I move it, it's not moving the image behind it, it's only moving the mask right now. But that's all you need for this particular project. Something to note, when you're using the move tool and you click on a layer, you can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move around a layer without you having to do it with the mouse. Sometimes this is good if you want to position something precisely, to use the arrow keys to move around a particular layer. Alright, now I'm going to make one more layer down here. I'm going to select the rectangle tool up here and select the bottom left hand area. This time the adjustment layer that I'm going to pick is the pattern layer. So I'm going to click on pattern right here, and you'll see that you have a pattern that appears in the area that you selected. You can change the scale of it right here, so you can zoom in on the pattern more or less. This is kind of what looks like a dirt pattern. You can also move the pattern around inside. If you have this pattern fill area selected, you can click on the pattern and drag it to move it around to get it to be exactly where you want it to be. if you click on this picture of a pattern, you'll see a bunch of different types of patterns that you can choose. These are all rock patterns, so you can see that there's a bunch of different rocks that I can choose from. If you don't like the patterns that are here, you can find more patterns if you click on the little gear right here. And just like before, down here on the bottom right, there's a whole bunch of different types of patterns that you can choose. So I'm going to choose nature patterns, press OK, and now I have some flowers, some leaves, different types of patterns that you can use. I like this one right here, so I'm going to stick with that. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. That's good right there. Okay. Now you'll notice down here I have a mask already that's listed. I want to select the layer, and just for the extra credit assignment, I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to click on the shape down here, custom shape. I'm going to choose a custom shape that I want to use. I like this one. I'm going to draw that custom shape over the top of this area, and then I'm going to click on mask. And there we go. Now it's a masked area right here, and it looks great. All right, we have one last area that we're going to create for our next quadrant right here. And for this quadrant, you need to pick a picture that you want to use. So I'm going to go and find an image on the internet. I'm going to simply search for something. I'm going to click under the image search to find a nice puppy. Here we go. Perfect. All right, I'm going to right click on this picture. After I found the picture and image search that I want to find, I can right click on it and go to copy image. I click on copy image, go into Photoshop, and I'm going to press Control V in order to paste that image in. Now you're going to say, hey, wait, maybe my image is back behind something else. There's a chance that it could be underneath something. If so, it's because your layer is underneath the other layer. So if you want to see it, you might want to drag it up to make it on top of the stack so it appears on top of everything else. I'm going to click this image and drag it. The way I did that was I chose the move tool up here, which looks like a cross. Anytime you want to move something, you have to do that. Make sure that your show transform controls is clicked, and you should be able to resize the layer that you currently have selected. There we go. Now you'll notice it's all blurry. In order to actually make it resize and set to that size, you can either click the check mark up here, you can double click on the image, or you can press the enter key on your keyboard, and it should make it a little bit more clear. There we go. Now what I want to do is I want to select the area over that quadrant with my rectangle tool or my rectangular marquee, make it to where it shows all these marching ants right here, and I'm going to click on the hue saturation mask this time. If I go to the adjustment layers, I want to use hue saturation. And when I do that, I can now see this menu that pops up right here. I'm going to just go here, and you can see that if you drag this slider, it's going to change the colors of that particular image. There's a whole bunch of different colors that I can choose from. You can also choose to change the saturation of those colors. If I turn this dial all the way to the left, it makes it black and white, so there's no color. The more I move it to the right, the more saturated or powerful the colors are. Notice now it's extremely colorful. It's almost psychedelic in its color. It's a wild looking doggy now. I'm going to set this back to 0. You can also change with this slider. You can change the lightness or darkness of that particular area. So you have a bunch of different color options of what you can do. Alright, so after I've chosen to add color to this, let's say I want it like that. That one's pretty good. Oh, there's one more cool option that you can do with the color saturation. There's an option that says colorize down here. if you click on that colorize option, it's going to flatten your whole image to make it black and white, but also to where it adds color to the top of that black and white image. So I can make it all one color, basically. I can make it very green or very blue or whatever I want. This is great for making posters because you can set a poster to be one color that's not really distracting to the eye, but then you can put stuff on top of it. So very helpful. If it's too bright, you can just adjust the lightness to make it darker. That works too. All right, all kinds of fun options with this particular tool. So I'm going to make this puppy red. That's cool. Spooky puppy. There we go. And now I'm done with that. Now you'll notice that there are two different layers for this. There's the actual image layer on the bottom, and then there's this hue saturation layer which goes over the top. If I want to make a mask for this, I might have to mask both of them, or I can just put a mask for my hue saturation. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it to where just this red section is going to be colored over the top of it. So just like before, I'm going to pick the custom shape area right here towards the bottom. Then I'm going to pick a shape that I want to use. I'm going to put a, let's see, I want something to float on top of this doggy. So I'm going to grab this heart right here. That'll work. So I have a heart shape. I'm going to drag that heart shape over the picture that I have. And if I press mask, you'll notice that now it just put that saturation layer now has that mask. If I want, I can also click on the other layer and I can make a mask of that. So let me try, oh, I don't know, putting a star. I'm going to take this star and drag that out, and then click on mask, and it will just mask the picture. So you should see that each individual layer can have a different mask on top of it. And as seen in this hue saturation layer, if we look at this, we actually have two masks laid on top of it. We have the hue saturation layer mask, or the layer itself. We have a mask that makes it only apply to the bottom right corner. And then we have our mask that has the little heart on top of it. So you have a lot of control with this idea of masking layers. There's a lot of creative options of things that you can create with this. I hope you have a lot of fun finding images and editing them with these different processes. You can use adjustment layers to make a lot of fun things. I hope you have a great time, and I will see you again soon.